Okay, we might as well get started, Douglas. This is the ESIP Wildfire Cluster. Thanks so much for joining this session today. We're going to be talking about the Wildfire Commission report. Those of you who may have seen it, it was released back in September. We're going to be looking in the Wildfire Cluster here for how we can support some of the recommendations in that commission report and see what we can do to engage more of the ESIP community and bring together a lot of our talents and capabilities and data as well. So next slide, Douglas. The first thing that I wanted to do is just to let everybody know who has joined us is the wildfire cluster formed last January, and it's a year ago in the ESIP winter meeting of 2023. We usually meet on the second Wednesday of every month, and we're going to change that to the second Thursday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. And we use Zoom. You can find out when you can see on the ESIP community calendar when those meetings happen, and then you can just click on that link and join the Zoom meetings. But again, it's going to meet, we're going to meet the second Thursday of every month. We'll be sure to let Megan and the ESIP folks know about that so they can change it on the community calendar because right now it's Wednesdays. We have an ESIP Slack channel, Wildfires, and we also have the Wildfire listserv. You can see that in the notes document. We actually have, and Douglas, I'll ask you to share in the chat the link to the Kiko chat notes, for our meeting
Let me
here
just share
today.
on the screen really quick so how
Sure.
people can find the notes document. If you go to the Kiko chat page of the session, you will directly find the notes on the screen here, and we would like to invite you to put your contact inform or your information in the check-in part of the notes.
That's great. That's great. And so the other thing that I'll show on the next slide in just a minute is that we have now an ESIP YouTube channel and playlist for the wildfire cluster. And we want to use that kind of creatively to give anybody additional information on what's happening in the wildfire space across federal agencies and things like that. Resources for the cluster. We have the cluster listserv, the wiki page. We can edit that as time goes on for things that we're focusing on. And the recording and notes are all available from the 2023 January meeting. These links will be put into the, well, they're in the PowerPoint that's been uploaded to the repository for this session. So you can download that PowerPoint and actually click on those links. And the ESIP weekly update, Allison Mills puts out for ESIP. If we have any wildfire news or you have any news that you'd like to share related to any wildfire data that you have or activities that you're getting involved in the wildfire space, the ESIP weekly update is a good opportunity to get that out to all the ESIP stakeholders. Next slide, please. Here's a little screen grab of the ESIP Wildfire Cluster sub-channel. If you go to the ESIP YouTube channel, you'll see that under ESIP collaboration areas, we now have the Wildfire Cluster and also the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster has a sub-channel. I think there's only one video in each. One of the things that I'm doing is we also work closely with NOAA in their fire and smoke initiative and their river ice and flooding initiative. And we're coordinating with them to take any presentations that are relevant to wildfire activities and record them, edit them, and put them up into our YouTube channel so it can be a good resource. And over time, it should have a good inventory of presentations there. Okay, next slide. So now at the first poll question, Douglas, I'll let you take over for this one.
Yeah, sure. So for this session, Dave probably already mentioned at the beginning, this is a lot of discussion and conversation about what are things really concerns you about the wildland fire and how it relates to your life as well as your job. And so if you can go to Slido, use the code wildfire or just scan the QR codes, that you can find our first poll that's already active here. Understand what's your role in relation to wildland fire. Either it can be just a committee member that is affected by the wildland fire, or it can be your job as emergency responder or data manager that providing the data relevant for fire management and mitigation activities, or you're a researcher doing the wildfire research, or different things that's going on. We also have a teacher, um, an educator's role, and if you have others, we invite you to type in the chat what your role is in the fire realm. It will always be surprising to see different perspectives on the fire. I see some chat coming. Dave said data and collaboration provider. Great. Oh, a lot of others here. Educational researcher. Thanks, Carla. PD provider, does that mean a professional development, Carla?
Yes.
Okay, great. We'll make sure to capture those in the notes, and so we can summarize those information as well. We'll give it another 30 seconds. Great. It's great to see the education committee members here. Thanks, Shelly. Human dimensions researcher. Great. Very specific. I like that. Right. Give it a couple more seconds before we move on to our next Slido poll. Okay, now we're moving ahead. So here, just want to ask everyone go back to your memory lane, probably not that far back, because there's some huge events happened before, just last year. And what wildland fire events have affected you or leave a really strong impression on you, that you can immediately think about. So we get campfire. Paradise wildfire in California, great. Another campfire, California wildfire. Maui, right? Just happened last year, really devastating. Marshall, Cold Spring Fire, Colorado. I guess there are not much Canadian from that in this session. Yes, somebody just type that. Let's see what are other impressions. Oh no, sorry for whoever typed that in. That there's really direct connection for the family members who are impacted by that. Oregon Washington fire, yes, that's also a really huge event happened a couple years back. Right, let's give it another 30 seconds. I see there are people still typing. Yeah, I think the downstream implication of the smoke from Canadian wildfires last year is quite severe. Great, thanks for this. As from what you can see, that it really affecting everyone's from really direct impact to those distant downstream implications from the fire. Right. Next question is that where do you often get information related to those ongoing fire events? Be you can be as specific as you want, like a specific person you follow on social media, or it can be as general as like agencies or like media platforms like TV. Great. And first jumped in and TV, the news, agency, web services, news channel, social media, State Department of Environment. Okay, yes. It's a sad but true answer sometimes. Look out the window sometimes. News channel, the fire.gov site, agency web services. So if for the people who put like web services from agencies, I would invite you to put those specific services in the chat if possible, or in this in the answer as well for it, right? Social media, news sites. Looks like a lot of people relies on the social media and news channels to get information. Community, okay. Let's give it one more minute to allow people to provide. I see people mentioned the word view earlier for the NASA data and air.gov for the air quality. Great. Two more people are typing. Scanners. Oh, interesting. I assume that it's the emergency radio channel that they're scanning. All right. Thanks. Those are all helpful information. Next, I think this will be the last poll question before we get into the commission reports. So, which is asking a ranking problem. So what are aspects of the wildland fire concerns you the most? You can rank the um, most to most concerning to you to the least, but it's all relative. I know some people want to say it's all important. Right. See a lot of people right now with education outreach on the top. And so for people who choose others, you can always put things that concerns you in the chats about the specific aspects of that. Redefining the wildfire urban interface. Thanks, Shelley. I'm gonna wait for we get to a few, give it 1 or 2 more minutes. Yeah, we got 12 people in the poll. I think our record number is 15 for the first question. Let's see if we can break our records.
We can do it. 3 more. We just need 3 more.
Education outreach seems like we have a really strong interest in that, which is great that we have really capable hands in ESIP who can support these activities and effective wildland fire management to limit the damage. Accurate. All right, thanks. I think we're gonna got a lot of information in here. We're gonna move on. Oh, One more is ranking. Yes, we got 15. We tied.
All right. I knew we could do it.
Right. Steve said impacts on air quality, including the health concerns. Thanks, Steve. I hope the air quality session went well. All right. Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you for the reports.
Okay. Thanks, Douglas. So as we were thinking about forming the wildfire cluster, we did it because, all of the activities that were going on and the wildfires that were breaking out. And in September, the administration came out with this report called On Fire report of the Wildland Fire Mitigation and Management Commission. There are a lot of members of this commission from state agencies, tribes, local organizations, federal agencies. Next, Douglas, you can hit the button. And so, they had some fanfare going out with this report, but really, next slide, what it showed was that there were a whole bunch of recommendations for an overhaul of how this nation deals with wildfires. Urgent new approaches, you can see these overarching themes, urgent new approaches, collaboration, how do we improve collaboration and sharing of data to improve decision making, proactive actions, how can we move from reactive to proactive when it comes to wildfires, enabling beneficial fire. Some people might say, well, what the heck is that? Fire is a long, long time ago, is a naturally occurring thing. And it helps to energize the ecosystem and help it to recycle. And so there's beneficial fire. And as we move more into the urban wildland fire interface, wildfire seems to be, turning more deadly and impactful. Enabling beneficial fire is a really important approach that not many communities understand at all. Workforce development, supporting and expanding that workforce, modernized tools for decision making. There's a lot of findings in there that tools are just so disparate that each organization is picking up their own to use them. Also, investing in resilience. How, with a climate change that's happening so fast, can we make our communities more resilient to wildfires? And how can we work to make wildfires less impactful? Next slide, please.
I think it's me again.
Yep.
So if you heard Dave just earlier, so in that report, there are 148 recommendations that's grouped in these 7 key themes. So we want to see I know not everyone have read that report, but just based on the major themes that emerge from that report, what do you think the critical themes from the report that the ESIP community can contribute to the most? Modernizing tools for informed decision making, shifting from reactive to proactive, investing in resilience, okay, supporting collaboration, okay. Right, there are 7 that cannot fit into one screen, but we can see the ranking right now, the modernizing tools and shifting to proactive fire management and supporting collaboration. Oops, sorry. Somehow yep. Thanks for catching that, Shally. I think the workforce is the one that is left out here. My apologies. Modernizing tours, shifting from reactive to proactive. Right. You see people are still ranking. One more still going on, okay. Ah, great. So right now it looks like modernizing tools for informed decision making and shifting from reactive to proactive is the second, and then third one is a supporting collaboration, which is a slightly so Dave and I had a discussion about what seems to be on people's highest priority list, and we get 2 out of 3 right. So Dave,
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. Thanks, Douglas, and thanks everybody for participating in that. Douglas and I talked about how can, the ESIP wildfire cluster really contribute to some of these priorities. And we said, oh, maybe, people will come up with supporting collaboration and modernizing tools for informed decision making about, with the talents that exist within ESIP. Now, keep in mind that there are a lot of ESIP clusters out there that may, the education committee and AI and all that sort of those important clusters that we can end up working with them or across cluster activities to see what we can come up with for the next meeting, the summer meeting in Asheville. And so we're going to have those series of monthly meetings. So we hope that you come back to those meetings to continue this conversation. But I want to cover these 2 items and how they were reported and what the recommendations were in the report. So Douglas, next slide, please. For supporting collaboration, wildfire mitigation and management goes well beyond the federal government. So the federal government can only do so much. And they really wanted to include states, tribes, local governments, private sector, NGOs, and academia, because all of these organizations have unique capabilities and capacities that the federal government cannot fulfill. Next slide. More inclusive and involve greater collaboration among federal agencies and between federal agencies and non-federal governments, organizations, and communities. So the whole idea of data providers and being able to create trusted data out so people can get access to it is something that's very important. And it's essential to building these relationships. I'm sure you've heard in the past that during a disaster is no time to share business cards. So this is one of the things that the ESIP wildfire cluster can do is build those relationships beforehand, invite people to come in and talk to us about what's going on. And so selected, oh, that's okay. You can go to the next one. It's okay. Selected recommendations aligned with the theme of supporting collaboration, supporting new and existing partnership programs between federal agencies and non-federal entities. So hopefully this shows that the federal government doesn't have to do everything by themselves. They can engage partners, engage private sector organizations, non-governmental organizations, provide financial and technical assistance to support existing and emerging wildfire resilience collaborative groups. That could be us. It could be us in the wildfire cluster within ESIP that if we, decide to do some things that could garner the attention of communities or other agencies or bringing agencies and states together on certain things, that's something that, we can talk about in the cluster. These groups can provide invaluable place-based knowledge, support effective agency decision-making, and leverage investments at multiple scales. And so the other thing about working with communities, these pods, I don't know if you've heard of potential operational delineations process. Pods are taking like a community near a mountain or a wildfire area and divvying those areas up by access roads or access points to create these pods of access. And that's what potential operational delineations are. You really need to get communities involved in that. And that could happen through, I'm sure some communities have been talking about it for a while, but could really lead to more involvement, particularly in those that are underserved, that live in the urban wildland fire interface. Next slide. Also supporting or modernizing tools for informed decision-making. this is really amazing in this report, and I encourage you to download it. We put a link to the report in the description of our session. But science, data, and technology can play an important role in better understanding this environment. I think we all know that, but it's something that this report identifies, that current efforts and resources are dispersed, siloed in their operations, challenging to access, and lack overarching structures for coordination or aggregation across relevant disciplines. I've already been in sessions here at ESIP where some agency representatives have said, hey, look, when we get an order, we follow that order and we think about our agency only. So once you talk about cross-agency collaboration, that's throwing a wrench into the process. And these conditions, the report says, hinder optimal use of research, data, and technology. I can see it. I've experienced it. Reduce opportunities for developing models and decision support tools. Folks will get a chunk of money for a grant or whatever, or maybe internally to an agency. Heads down, we're working on this. That's what we're going to produce because that's what our mandate is. But this current operation, the way agencies work together, prevents effective prioritization and coordination of wildfire science. And I think we're seeing that come together now. There are agencies that are working to address this report. Remember, this report are basically marching orders for agencies to implement these strategies and these recommendations. Next slide, please. Practitioner efforts are often frustrated by a lack of data and analytical tools. So when you go down to those that are working in the field, they might get 4 or 5 different organizations showing up with 4 or 5 different tools. When they get down to local scale, or they want to zoom out and go to a wider scale, that is difficult. And poor interoperability across scales is something that is a major concern of this report. Climate change. This was brought up by the report from the wildfire in New Mexico that developed, and it was supposed to be a prescribed burn, and it got out of hand and became one of New Mexico's largest wildfires ever. The head of the Forest Service came out and said climate change poses this additional challenge by fundamentally shifting wildfire risk. Our models don't know how to deal with wildfires in this climate change environment. The way we fight wildfires has to change to address this because wildfires are burning more intensely, they're moving more rapidly, and they're impacting more people. And when a wildfire burns, not only does it burn more intensely, it burns more acreage. And climate change is playing a big role. Next slide. And also, now more than ever, there's a need for coordinated and unified efforts to understand, model, and adapt to our altered conditions. I mean, we talk about applying AI to the wildfire space, and you got to train AI models. Well, we're in a rapidly changing climate. What does that challenge pose to AI? And will AI ultimately catch on to the speed at which wildfires are spreading? Decision-making must be driven by science and data that reflect the full complexity and interdisciplinary nature of wildfire. And we must embrace modern tools, including remote sensing, real-time decision support technologies, and updated modeling. Next slide. So these findings in these reports are pointing directly at ESIP, I think. I know Douglas is doing a lot of work in the wildfire space. Those of you who are here in this session are interested in the wildfire space. So to harness the full potential, interoperability must be improved. Research efforts must be better integrated with applied users. I've heard many times over the years, hey, we're a research project. We're not worrying about applications. Applications should really drive the research so we can get more a faster handle on what's happening. Take early research results and try to apply them into decision-making environments and use those early research results to inform communities, to make them part of the whole process of community building and reaching across organizations and communities. Decision support tools and services must be more effectively operationalized for practitioner use. So to be more useful, data needs to be accessible and actionable at a field level, made available at the scales and in formats that align with how it will be used. I know that many research projects don't really take into account operational implementation. This is something this report is saying, hold on here. We have to back up. We have to look at what's needed operationally and have that research feed into those operations. When I looked at these recommendations, I thought, wow, this is decades in the making. You know, you can't change agencies overnight. People are doing things the way that they normally do them. And now this whole new paradigm is going to be introduced. That's why we think there's an opportunity for the ESIP wildfire cluster and for you as participants to come in and help and provide your talents and your thoughts. Next slide, please. And so these are just a couple recommendations. Establish and fund. I mean, try to get your arms around this one. Establish and fund an interagency joint office with the mission of providing comprehensive assessment and prediction of the wildfire environment through data aggregation and science-based decision support services. Is that going to be NOAA? Is that going to be the Forest Service? When I see the word prediction, it sounds to me like it would be NOAA and the National Weather Service. It would be nice to hear how this report is impacting NOAA, so we can perhaps offer opportunities to connect with communities, to reach out from ESIP into the communities in which we live and say, hey, we have an opportunity to bring your input into this. Support improved operationalization of research through the creation of a fire science and technology board to help coordinate existing efforts. Oh boy, another federal organization or another board which has more than federal agency partners on it. How will that work? Improve data analysis, research, and decision support to aid communities in both mitigation and post-fire recovery efforts. Some of this is happening already on the ground by nonprofit organizations. We had a couple meetings ago, we had coalitions and collaboratives speak to us about the work they're doing on the ground through their USDA Forest Service grant process. There's another conference coming up in April in Denver called After the Flames. You can Google that and see if you want to participate in that. That's something that we've participated in the past. Creation of an interagency community wildfire risk reduction program and better integration of technical needs in the post-fire environment will help. That'll help streamline and enhance community risk reduction and recovery. Next slide. So this is what we'd like to talk about in this session. And you know, we gathered some information ahead of you beforehand, which is great, and we appreciate you participating in that. And we'll use that information to really guide where we head in the cluster. So successfully meeting the challenge of wildfire mitigation and management requires approaches that better involve all the relevant entities and every scale of society. This is a reach out to everyone from this report, from all of the authors in this report, to say we need help, we need to move fast, we need to be agile, and we need to bring data and technology and ideas to the table. And I can't think of anybody better but ESIP to do that. So Douglas, if you'd like to say anything else after this, please.
No, I think this is the cue for us to step off the soapbox and then
Yep.
inviting others to share what's most on your mind about how the ESIP community can work together based on the recommendations and the information that they've just presented. As they've mentioned, it's only just recommendations. It's really up to the community to implement a lot of those recommendations, pick up
Right.
some of the recommendations. So
Right.
please feel free either type in the chat or raise your hands about any thoughts you may have. Rama has the question. Dave, do you want to answer the question that Rama has, that
Rama
which
says,
groups? Yep.
okay, I may have missed it. Which groups were represented in contributing to the report? Yeah, Rama, the report link is in the write-up for the session. I have the report actually here on my iPad in front of me, and I'll just go to the top here. I'll just give you a few ideas for members. Okay. So here we go. Commission members, Senior Vice President of Diversity and Justice Climate Resiliency Project, Deputy County Manager of uh, Coconino County, Arizona, Senior Wildlife Researcher and Policy Analyst, Headwaters Economics, Senior Contributing Scientist, Environmental Defense Fund, Executive Vice Chair, National Wildfire Coordinating Group, Deputy Director, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Wildland Fire Captain, Flagstaff, Arizona, Director of Engineering Laboratory, National Institutes of Standards and
I think,
Technology. So,
Dave, we don't need to go through all those names.
yeah,
Basically,
yeah,
it's a diverse group from
there you
different
go.
federal agencies as well as the
Yep.
non-federal members that is also listed on website. Rama, you can go to the website to find out who has contributed to the report.
Yeah, and you can share that link in the chat. That'd be great, so anybody can just go to it and see. But it's a very large group and quite a few federal members as well.
There's another question in the chat, Dave.
Okay. Unlike other disasters, wildfire has been treated and restricted to more from a data point of view and less from a science understanding point of view, which in turn affects proper education and outreach to a larger community. Follow-up question is how ESIP can bolster wildfire science. Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that we should talk about here. And hopefully, people, just feel free, raise your hands. This is like, we'd be in person if this weren't virtual, and we'd be in sitting around in a circle in a conference room talking about this stuff. So please bring your input, raise your hand, participate. It's something that we're hoping that we continue to do through the months leading up to the summer meeting. So the question is, how can ESIP bolster wildfire science? Shelley says, I'm aware of UCAR and other institutes who are studying wildfires as a science. Who else is researching the science?
I think NASA has the wildfire specific programs. NOAA has fire-related research as well. So there are specific research programs dedicated to the fire.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I know the applied sciences part of NASA is also looking into putting more NASA data to work to help with decision making.
Since we have Shelley and Carla who are all interested in education and outreach, maybe if any of you want to speak up about what the information is that from the outreach and education side of things might be of interest, that you want to see the collaboration happening.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
As regarding fire and outreach education, so where do you see the ESIP can come in to help to facilitate those collaborations related to fire education outreach.
Right.
This is Shelley Olds, and there have been a number of educational modules that look at the science of wildfire, and how it can propagate. And in fact, Carla was on the working team who developed this through Concord's consortium. And then I'm aware of a number of education and outreach curricular materials that are more about the mitigation around your house and communities, building resilience, and then, of course, evacuation and what to do, as well as like basic information about what is fire, what are the elements that are needed for fire, and starting at that foundation, and then kind of moving forward from there. And a number of these were funded through the National Forest Service, in Alaska. I'm just thinking there was a project in Alaska, there was one in North Carolina, and I'm sure they need to be updated because these were, to my remembering, prior to like the climate change aspect of the super hot, super fast wind, the really scary stuff that happens while the fire is ramping up.
Thanks, Shelley and Carla.
I will say that the geohazard module was just, that grant just ended, so it does include climate change and it's very, very recent. I put that in the chat.
Great, thanks, Carla.
Right, thank you, Carla. Yeah, so I feel like there is kind of a gap between the community perspective and kind of where the scientists are, and the data groups. So that's why I think Carla and I are here, is to like glean how to make some of those connections.
If I may just drill on that point, so why do you see that this connection happens between the education or the like awareness and public awareness side and the research and operational side?
It's
my
not okay. You're asking me, is there disconnection?
Yeah.
I don't see it as a disconnection, more as a ramping up component. And I think as more of the Western United States is being impacted by wildfire, but although, Gatlinburg, who would have expected that? I think that there needs to be a national like awareness campaign at the very least. So I think it's more like education outreach, getting funding to those areas so that we can improve the awareness and, mitigation awareness and evacuation awareness.
I think that almost, yeah, go ahead, Carla.
I also think it has to do with where researchers publish sometimes. So if you publish in an academic journal about the science of wildfires, it's not going to get out necessarily. Not to be, I don't know, praising the hubby, but I did put 2 links in there because he did do some wildfire research, and it's published through a National Park Service newsletter, mostly to get it out to more Park Service folks, because those are the channels. So I think sometimes it's about how we communicate, and better communication to the public means making things simpler, but also available and letting people know about it. And those who want to read the technical publications, fine. But if they can't find them, then it doesn't matter, right?
Thanks, Carl. I think that also relates to some of the chat going on, which is now a lot of agencies are focusing on user engagement, telling the story from the user's perspective, why those data matters and how those data and services has changed certain aspects of those users. So I see Rama, Byron, and others are putting some information related to fire data and applications in the NASA domain. So I'm not sure if anyone want to come unmute and then speak some of those existing initiatives or the thoughts that you may have.
I just posted a link there for wildfires information, applied sciences program, as well as the firms group thing. It's all available from the link that I posted there.
Right. Thanks, Rama. Byron? I see you unmuted, but I cannot hear you. Are you speaking right now, Byron? Oh, I think we
Looks
can
like
come
he's
back.
trying to.
All right. Right. I also see some comments from Avi, Mike, and Nancy, I think. So anyone have additional thoughts on want to share?
Hey Douglas, if I may chime in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I posed that question because I believe so I'm talking from a research student perspective, right? So, for example, you see these products, remote sensing products, right? Which NASA has, whether it be MODIS or some other products. Uh, but the real focus is, I think, for example, let's give a comparison with floods, right? If there's a flood that's happening, later on the mitigation step is to come up with maybe better drainage for that area. But what's the similar strategy that should be taken for wildfires, for example, instead of just mitigating it? What's the long-term plan? How do you understand that this step has to be taken so that in future there won't be wildfires over this region? Or is it just, left to probability maybe?
Thanks.
Mhm.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Because are you one of the fellows?
Yes, I'm one of the
Great.
fellows. I'm in the soil info cluster this year. So yeah.
Great. Welcome, and thanks for helping with this session.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Ram. I just want to talk about the mitigation aspect of it. I think there are actually a prevention aspect of it. There are local fire departments tend to they make announcements saying that we'll come and help you, uh, reduce the probability of fire for your house, for example. What are the steps you can take to manage your landscaping, for example, to reduce the fire damage? So that's the mitigation step.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thanks, Rama. And I see Steve and Mike contributing more to the pile of links. I'm going to ask Steve if anything that you want to speak up about. I cannot hear you at this moment, Steve, if you are speaking.
No, we still don't hear you, Steve.
We'll go to Mike first and then come back to see if Steve or Byron has. Right. Okay, no worries, Mike. Mike is adding a link to the Wildfire, which I think is about the fuel data set that a lot of people are using.
Hmm.
Okay, Dave, do you want to?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about, and listening to everybody, I'm wondering if what are some of the things that we can do in the wildfire cluster? And you can give me feedback in the chat here, or just raise your hand, say yes or no, or thumbs up. Is it worthwhile for us to post other talks and information on wildfires from other agencies or organizations into our YouTube channel? Will that be something that you would refer to use? I mean, it does take a little bit of effort, but we're also going to be inviting people from other organizations to come and present at our monthly meetings, so we can give them, 15 minutes and have question and answers and things like that. Is that something that would be of value to the wildfire cluster to offer? I see Byron said yes in the chat. There's a couple of thumbs up, I see. Okay. Yeah, Avi, that's a good point. I'm particularly interested to hear from operational users and what they need. That's something that could be, we could ask people to come and talk to us about that. If there are projects that are going on to connect with operational users, I would love for you to contact those folks and say, hey, you need to learn about this ESIP wildfire cluster. They want to hear about what you're doing because we're very interested in connecting with communities. Maybe we can invite a community to come in and talk to us a little bit about what they've done in their area with the help of nonprofit organizations or whatever to prepare for wildfires, and what is it that they wish they had.
Nancy has her hand raised. Nancy?
Yeah, sure. Nancy, please.
Yeah. Hi, yes. One area I think would be really interesting, it's partly had to do with the mitigation aspects that Rama mentioned, but also connecting with planning departments in areas. I mean, a lot of the people in California, in the Paradise Fire, Camp Fire, and so on are, were burned out, and and now they're thinking about coming back, maybe depending on all sorts of factors. But I think it'd be really interesting and useful for us as a group, as a community, to understand that relationship a little bit better, or maybe with some kinds of examples or use cases of what cities or regional areas are doing in terms of that, the after effects of a fire for the future. I mean, so are people going to go back and continue building in the same area? What kinds of things can people do? And also the relationship of that to climate change. So following that, kind of almost immediate response to fire, and what people want to do. I mean, a lot of times they just want to go home, but is home, what's home going to be like again? What can cities and counties and regions do to help support that, or to educate people about, what's smart to do and what isn't? And then, what are those same agencies thinking of doing as data comes out more about what is happening with climate change? So bringing people in to talk about what the issues are that they're facing in terms of, preparing people, and, what kind of things could be done, I think would be really helpful to understand the environment.
Yeah, that'd be great. And Nancy, if you have ideas or people that you know of that are working in that area that you could point us to contact, or anything like that, I think that would be really interesting to have them address us. Tell us what's going on, and we're going to try to do that throughout the period of the wildfire life cycle cluster, but we don't know everybody, that's for sure. And we need that network.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And interestingly, Nancy, you mentioned about the planning and also the rebuild after the recovery. And I think that goes to more than just the fire as a disaster or the hazard, is because flooding is the same thing when people are like rebuild in the same flood zones and or are planning to build back in those areas. And yesterday, actually, Department of Commerce just announced the 85 million investment in the things called industry proving grounds that is part of the Inflation Reduction Act that NOAA is working on, trying to working with three key industries. One is the retail industry, the other one is finance, the insurance reinsurance industry, and the last one is the engineering industry to provide those climate information that can support those industries, especially when you're talking about hazards. The one thing it really directly relates to the engineering standards as well as um, the insurance reinsurance for those homeowners and other parts who will be insuring their properties against those disasters. And that is based on, and maybe we can have some conversations in the actual meeting in July.
Yeah, that sounds good because the insurance issues in California are just huge. I mean, so many people are having such trouble getting insurance especially if they're in fire zones or flooding zones as well. And I mean, the governor is talking about doing something about it, but that's a tough one. So, but an important one. So that'd be an interesting aspect of it too.
Yeah, I will try to find a link to the news release of the investment just announced yesterday.
Yeah, who does that go to, that investment?
Well, I know NCEI is one of the key players in that.
So it's like NCEI has the money and they're going to determine what partners they're going to work with.
I cannot speak directly, so I will just get you the link to that announcement. You can probably trace back to that information.
No, I think it's great. And, since we're going to be in Asheville in the summer for the summer meeting, maybe this is something we can really key on to have a, special session at the summer meeting dealing with wildfires, climate change, and these industries. To talk about how wildfires are becoming, more of an issue. I know we work with some transportation and communication organizations, and wildfire smoke is a big issue for them and becoming more important. So maybe that's something that we can really dive into as well. It'd be great to continue this conversation in our monthly meetings. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Douglas. I did see that announcement yesterday.
Just put the news release in the chat. I'm gonna go to Steve, Maggie, and Byron in the conversation about the confusion of many interagency wildfire coordinating groups. And anyone want to specifically mention about some of those interagency fire-related working groups? I know, Dave, you might be know or involved with some of those groups.
Yeah, I know, Steve, I don't know if you came back in. Do you have audio? Still can't hear you. That's a bummer.
I can read Steve's question, which is that Googling around, there are so many interagency wildfire coordinating groups. This has to be confusing for a regular person to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure. And I think the report in their recommendations is saying we need to have a centralized office basically that deals with wildfires. I'm simplifying it. And I'm sure that's going to, set off a lot of turf battles on who's going to be doing that. But the problem goes on. Climate change continues. Wildfires will continue. And, the idea of what can we do as a wildfire cluster to really dive into something that's unique that, only the wildfire cluster can do. I really like the idea of aiming for Asheville and having a special session there. And then maybe our monthly meetings could be pulling together people who are doing some work on the ground or have some thoughts. Maggie says interagency post-wildfire working group. Yeah, I know, Steve and Maggie, you're right. There are a lot of them out there, and there's a lot of funding going into agencies from the Infrastructure Act and supplementals and things like that. But yeah, please, go ahead, Douglas.
I'm gonna ask Megan if she can come on mute, share something, the proposal from the data stewardship committee. They were actually also thinking about something related to fire.
You gave me no heads up that you were gonna ask.
Sorry.
But I can share a link to show the proposal. So recently a new person has come into the chairship of the data stewardship committee. And Alicia Wood Charlson is very interested in looking at data integration across ESIP and looking at what's necessary to link data streams in meaningful ways that support accurate navigation across the data landscape, and thinking both about humans and machines. And so using wildfires as a possible use case, possibly thinking about factors or features of a fire, determining restoration characteristics. There's a whole document that I will pop into the chat where you can read a little bit more about it. That group hasn't officially met yet. They'll meet next, I believe it's February 7th. But if you want to get in on the ground level in some of these conversations, that's a great place to pop in. I believe they're meeting on Monday afternoons, and I'll share some information about that.
Thanks, Megan. Sorry for not warning you
No,
for
it's
this.
it's okay. And I've been sitting here like typing something into the chat, but not necessarily feeling confident enough to hit enter. So I'm just gonna say I've been bopping around sessions, so apologies if I'm a little bit off base here, but it seems like listening to you all talk for a while now, like a unifying theme here is also cultivating a healthy fear of wildfires, like whether we're talking about students or community members, people who live near a fire, people who live far away from a fire and think, oh, it'll never happen to them. And also acknowledging that fires are an interesting thing, because I was trying to think to myself, are there other types of disasters where sometimes they're not always a bad thing? Like the way we try to mitigate wildfires by sometimes having controlled fires. So like, how do you work on people's perceptions? And then also, like Nancy was saying, how do you help people realize you still have choices and things might still be okay after a fire? So that's me babbling from my non-expert point of view, but really excited to hear you all chat.
No, that's great. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, that's really a great input. And I'm thinking that if we want to have a target on Asheville in the summer meeting, if we can think of just something small but tangible, that we want to focus on, that we can show sort of 6-month increments of what we would call success. I like the idea, Megan, of cultivating a healthy fear of wildfires, and I'm thinking too, the relationships that we have with the broadcast meteorology community, the folks who deliver your evening, morning, and noon weathercasts on TV. We might be able to help bring them up to speed on the dangers and impacts of wildfires, and maybe some messages that they might want to deliver to their audience. That could be something that might not be such a heavy lift in reaching them. I think we would just need to think about what are the key messages that we would want them to talk about when they're doing the weather on TV. That's another idea. We don't have to do it. It's just something that we're able to do with the network that we have in place there. Yeah. Anybody else have some comments or input?
I think I would like invite people who have not speak to see if any of you have thoughts you want to share, either in the chat or come on mute, raise your hands. And we want to make sure everyone has a chance to be heard in the session. Thanks for sharing the link from Data Stewardship Committee. Megan?
Great. Whatever
Steve.
ideas.
Steve,
Don't be shy.
Steve seems like really invested in ChatGPT efforts with both air quality and the fire.
Can you hear me this time?
Hey,
Yes,
we can hear you.
So I exited and re-entered, and that worked because all my settings were right. I don't know why I couldn't get through before. But yeah, I mean I guess I would just argue that we shouldn't forget that depending on who we think the audience is, some of the emerging tools like ChatGPT could be worth investigating. Because I do think we're seeing this sort of sea change from the old-fashioned Google search type thing to something that's more explanatory for a naive user. And we all know, and we talked about in yesterday's session, yeah, there are cautionary notes, and you have to be somewhat careful. But the response that I got, I just tried it a couple of minutes ago, looked like it was pretty on target to me. So I figured I would throw that out there. And yeah, what I was going to say earlier is just there are clearly so many player entities out there. It's pretty confusing if you're just trying to figure out, well, what's the best outfit for me to talk to if I'm trying to, do something in the wildfire space. But I don't know that there's any easy fix for that, whether that's really within ESIP's wheelhouse or not. But from sort of a user experience, customer experience perspective, it looks like a mess right now. I mean, it's great that you have lots of people who are active. And yeah, like you said, Dave, there's a lot of money being thrown around on wildfires now, unsurprisingly. But I'm not sure that it's serving an average person all that well, the way everything is sort of, 1,000 flowers blooming or whatever right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought just I find it interesting, but maybe this is necessary in the beginning to align agencies or get them to do, work focusing in this area. You got to dump a bunch of money in there, and then, maybe 5 years out, they'll be ready for partners. But there's a lot of other activities that can happen. And, we've talked about it already about education initiatives that have happened and materials that are together, and communities that have had wildfires already, I think are somewhat sensitive to wildfires. I saw a presentation where they're very engaged up to 6 months after a wildfire. And then it kind of fades away to other issues and other concerns. But, when they do erupt again, like anything, you should need to know what to do or how you can mitigate the disaster from getting onto your property. I think that there is something we can do, and I love the diverse nature of ESIP and the thoughts that are there. No idea is a bad one, and we should talk about what it is that you would like to do. We have some good information that we pulled together, but before the session ends, we'd like to have others speak up too. Please raise your hand and chat.
Dave, I'm gonna try to see if I can switch topic a little bit, just because going back to the theme of this World conference this year, grounded in data and the trust and the ethics, and Steve's comments about ChatGPT and other tools. reminded me maybe we should also talk about some of those aspects that we just heard yesterday at the opening plenary and other, and what are people's thoughts on the data ethics and trust related to all the things we just talked about in the past 40 minutes.
Well, this is Nancy again. One thing I would say about that is reaching out to or providing information to local people about how they can, what they know about wildfires as an example, and other disasters and so on, and what can be done, something about the tools that are available and so on, is a way to build trust in, especially if they're coming from government or nonprofit agencies, it's a way to build trust in that level of kind of governance, community governance, which I think would be a nice counter to the distrust people have for, especially in some of the rural communities. I grew up in one, and there's a lot of distrust there at the federal level. But if people understand that, part of government is also the person who's in the city council, a person who's in the planning office in your own local area, and they know enough and they know how to help you, that is something that can really help engender trust, and maybe it goes up where it's important, but that focusing on the local and regional areas, I think, might be useful for us to do as a cluster, focusing on that.
Thanks, Nancy. I see Shelley has a chat. Fire behavior prediction versus the post-fire conspiracy theories, which is a heavy topic. Shelley, do you want to comment on the chat you just put in?
Well, I think that we need to almost look at this as a process, because there's before fires happen, and someone had mentioned that we could have like a wildfire probability, and actually National Weather Service has the fire warnings. They used to call them red flag, but apparently that term is used in many different situations. So they made it more human friendly, saying fire warning or fire weather potential. So there's the pre, and then there's during a wildfire. And I'm guessing that there doesn't, well, sorry, I keep like stopping myself. Yes, people are getting good information, but sometimes there is some misinformation during those situations on Twitter X. And then there's the post, and yeah, that's a heavy situation because it's it's like the disintegration of trust, and there's evidence that other countries are messing with our public's trust to government agencies. Is that an area we want to go to? I don't know. I feel like we have such a strong area within the data realm. That's what makes us unique. So I'm not discouraging these other avenues at all. And I want us to remember we're data people. We've got a lot of really good data connections.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks, Shelley. Yeah. And there are a lot of great chats going on there. I see a comments from Rama to Nancy. How do we focus on local when there are a very large number of local entities? Should we invite some of them at random to our classroom meetings?
Yeah, I was starting to type a response. Can I just say it?
Yes, go ahead.
It's faster. I was just thinking, I was kind of riffing on the idea that Dave had about, doing something in Asheville, and thinking, if there's some community or some, God forbid, fire or whatever disaster in the Asheville area that where we could showcase, a use case basically, or a study of what the issue was, what the prep was, what the tools were used. You did a couple of those, Dave, a number of times with the disaster cluster, and I think taking advantage of people in the local area where we're having the meetings would be easier to get people to come, and B, would start that whole idea of getting and understanding the wider group of ESIP and people who come to the meetings. Not that ESIP is the problem, but getting an idea of how that kind of information could inform a local community would be kind of a step towards it. So it's kind of the slow community engagement process that involves education as well. But I think yes, it may be at random, but if it's local to a certain area and there's a combination of criteria that we're looking for in terms of putting forward a use case, that might be something that's useful. I mean, we did something like that in California with the California wildfires, I think a couple of meetings ago, and brought together people. This was as part of the ag cluster when I was working on that. So that was a really good approach, I think, not only for the clusters to do the work and ESIP to do the work to showcase the data, but also to bring in the communities and to kind of, from the ground up, rebuild that trust.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
That's great, Nancy. And I'm wondering too, maybe we invite the fire chief for Asheville, to come and participate or speak about their strategies for wildfires and what are they doing? What successes are they seeing? Because wildfire or fire chiefs, like broadcast meteorologists, it's a pretty small community. There's a lot of them around the country, but I'm sure they meet and they talk a lot. I really like the idea of engaging local people when we're in person there.
Well, and planners too. Planners for the city or the county would maybe they'd be willing to come too.
Right.
Especially if they're dealing with, planning for that kind of disaster, that kind of problem.
Thanks, Nancy. I see one hand raised. Shelley, go ahead.
If there ends up being a collaborative kind of session that is pulling in community members, I just want to mention that education will have a one-day workshop. It's really for educators and it'll be broader than wildfire. However, I think there's an opportunity of overlap there. And, if this cluster is having a session the same day or a different day, like the day before or after, that would be a great way to say, hey, and we're also to our educators say, you can come to this session and learn about wildfire science and community efforts. It's I'm just speaking off the top of my head, but
yeah,
just throwing it out there. There's kind of the synergy here.
That's great, Shelley. Yeah.
Thanks. And yeah, speaking of the fire locally, I mean, the most severe one that we have seen in the region is the Gatlinburg fire. That it's very close, not that far away. It's only about an hour and a half or 2 hours away from here. And that took people by surprise. The Park Service is right there, and Forest Service is Forest Service Research Station here, as well as NOAA and CEI here. So that there's a lot of conversation can be had with cross agencies on the fire related informations here. Let me just do a quick time check. We have 10 minutes left in the session, and really enjoying all those conversations we're just having. And it's really robust conversation with 24 people for the past hour or so. And maybe we can offer some last round of comments and before we jump into the wrapping up parts, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'd love to give the opportunity for anybody to give us their thoughts. I mean, mine are that this has been a great session because we're getting a little bit more focus on what we want to do for the summer meeting. And I love the idea. And I'm thinking too, Douglas, with your sharing of that announcement yesterday, I could see a really nice panel. Maybe we'll propose to Megan and ESIP that we have a panel plenary session by the wildfire cluster with the fire chief and an Asheville planner and the insurance, retail, and engineering sectors on wildfires and the dangers they pose along with other disasters. It's just something floating around in the head. And then if we can germinate on that idea over our meetings over the next few months, we could probably have a nice poster for ESIP and what the wildfire cluster wants to do, and what we're going to do. Have a nice poster at the ESIP summer meeting as well. They're my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Dave. Let's leave Megan alone for a couple of weeks before talking about the July meeting.
Definitely.
I saw Shelley put in the chat there. Megan, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, that sounds very exciting, and Susan's our plenary designer, so certainly she'll be interested in this idea. But I think, like, ahead of time, we should think about, if we're gonna bring in all these people, beyond just saying, this is a listening session, we want to hear from you. What are the types of things that we think, at least ahead of time, we might be able to assist them with in the future? Just sort of thinking about, like, what are we really promising them other than we want to hear from you, and how do we position ourselves not just as people who want to listen, but as people who could potentially help, even if we don't know all the concrete answers just yet. We might know more than we think at this time. And
Thanks,
does that
Megan.
involve picking one persona rather than multiple roles and trying to help everyone all at the same time?
Mm-hmm. As always, great guidance, Megan.
I think I'm going to move on to the last poll we have, which is open text fields. So how do you want to stay engaged with cluster? Feel free to say anything, like any specific topic you want to hear or any recommended speakers, or if you want to present, right? That always, this is, we want to hear what you want to see from the cluster and how do you want to stay engaged. Or you can just say, I just want to keep in the loop on the email. That's totally fine too. Great. That's totally fine as occasional observer. I did not see active typing.
I think some people are probably thinking about, yes, I want to be chair or co-chair of the cluster as time goes on.
That's always welcome. Attending telecons, great. We have a slice about upcoming telecons later. For typing, great. Mailing list. Keep an eye on the class, but probably don't have bandwidth for regular participation. That's fair. Everyone has limited time to focus on our daily jobs. Oh, we got some useful suggestions from the AI tool. Mailing list has 4 and then cluster has 3. Education outreach, great, thanks. I assume that's either from, I'm not making any assumptions, but we would love to have a joint meeting, maybe some time with the education committee to plan some joint activities for the July meeting if possible.
How long is that meeting going to be, Megan? A week?
4 days.
Yeah, the usual July length, 4 days.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Nobody's typing anymore. I'm just gonna move on to our closing slides so we can end on time. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to remind everybody that we are going to be meeting on the second Thursday. Megan, I don't know if you heard that in the very beginning, but we would need you to change that on the community calendar. And that's going to enable our wildfire fellow to join us every meeting. There was a conflict at the exact time that we had it before. So we want to make sure that we have that participation. And the time was open and nobody objected in our last meeting. So we'd like to change it to that day. Next meeting will be February 8th. I don't know if anybody's going to be at AMS in Baltimore next week at the same time that the Ravens play the Kansas City Chiefs. That's when it kicks off. But the meeting will be after February 8th is a week after that. So we'll be done with AMS activities too. And yeah.
Thanks, Dave. And
yeah.
I want to thank our two supporting fellows for this session, Sharif and Dapshish for the session. Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Patty, hosting this Zoom. And thanks, Megan, for being here and providing all the comments.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. We really appreciate your input. This cluster doesn't happen without you. And we're really looking to see where we can make a difference. And I think the conversation is excellent. We'll be looking at all these comments. So thanks everybody so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of ESIP, and maybe see you in the research showcase that starts at 4 o'clock or 4:30. Which time is that?
4 o'clock. See you there.
4 o'clock. See you there.
Eastern.
4 o'clock Eastern time. Thanks, everybody.